Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of the True Detective Night Country finale. Before I jump into my review, hit that sub button so you don't miss my reviews of The Regime, which is next up on HBO. I'll also be reviewing Three Body Problem on Netflix. So the episode opens right where we left off, and remember, it is New Year's Eve. So it's setting up for this show to end on New Year's Day, and Danvers and Navarro finally get to these ice caves. The ice caves look great. And it's a shout out to the production design team on this. I thought they looked really cool, and it was a really cool setting for the first half of this episode. A lot of this episode I really dug in the first half. Where I started getting frustrated and really angry at the episode was towards the end, which I'm going to go into when we get there. Now, it's interesting you do see in the opening credits this ice cave is actually there really quickly. You'll catch it and you'll recognize it now. And you also have the tag at the end of the credits this time of the wheel that rolls down the hallway past Jodie Foster. The show ends on the note that you get to choose if you want to make this supernatural or not. Everything still can be explained scientifically, all the hallucinations, what they're being haunted by, how these researchers were eventually at the end of the day killed, but it is your call on that, which I don't mind that, but I want to get more and more into things that really didn't work for me here and things that really did work for me. So I like the reveals in the beginning. I like how cool that it was the lab was connected through the ice caves to another underground lab. They found the star-shaped tool that was matching the Annie's wounds that were star-shaped. And they finally find Clark down here. So Clark tries to freeze Danvers, literally. And I love seeing Jodie Foster just use a pole to break through the glass. That was fun to watch. Now, the storyline that fell really flat for me is what they would cut back to with Peter. Really, a lot of it kind of just plays as like a, well, all this crazy stuff's happening with Navarro and Danvers. Meanwhile, this is what's happening with Peter getting rid of these two bodies. What didn't work was him showing up to Kayla in the blizzard, and he tells her, I need to do this one thing, then I will be with you. And I guess this is what won him over, that he showed up in the blizzard New Year's Eve to tell her this, and she kisses him. Meanwhile, he basically had done the same thing in the past, really, on Christmas Eve, and told her he has to do these important things, and she was pissed about it and called him an a-hole. So I don't know what the difference was here that made her like him all of a sudden, but that was very strange to me and didn't really land. Now, we'll see Navarro tortures Raymond Clark with Annie's audio tape, which was pretty nuts. And Navarro will find oranges again in the fridge. So you're seeing the orange, and she's talking about how her mother would peel them fully in one long strip, and Julia would too. And it's symbolic of themselves peeling back the layers now and seeing what's inside. And that's why they showed a scene this episode of Danvers actually doing that with the orange. And of course, they made a spiral on the plate. But with the reveals that start to come in this episode, again, the beginning reveals I really liked. Like Clark's revealing Annie found out too much. Pollution from the mind actually helps soften the permafrost. So they were actually encouraging the mines to pollute. It made their work easier. Now, what's a little silly about this reveal is that just with a paper trail, they explain it as that Annie found the secret lab and figure out what was happening. But it took our two detectives a way longer time with a lot more evidence in front of them to find the lab. So that was a little goofy. Now, Lund had caught Annie in the act, started killing her, and then all the researchers helped him finish the job. But the finishing blow really did come from Clark. But he does reveal they didn't cut the tongue. This will be a theme throughout the episode. We never learn who actually cut the tongue and put Annie's tongue there. So that's up for interpretation. I'd love to hear everyone's theories on that. Now, I want to point out something. I think I've pointed this out in a review before, and this isn't just a dig on this show's writing, because every show and movie does this, and I want writers to stop doing this. And a great example of it is in this scene where Danvers goes in the hallways and thinks about what really happened with Wheeler. Then when Navarro appears, she says, you know, I was just about to do it myself. And rightfully so, Navarro goes, you're about to kill Clark? And she goes, no, Wheeler. I hate writing now. It's so overdone. I'm sick of it. It doesn't make sense. People don't talk like this, where they say something in the middle of a sentence and it's just confusing. Like Navarro was confused. Like, who are you talking about? Where she's like, you know, I was just about to do it myself. I hate that. I see it in so many movies and shows. I just want writers to stop doing it. I think it's so corny now, and it's not how people talk in real life. You're not in the middle of a hangout and just start something like, yeah, I knew that was the case, and then someone goes, what? And then you go, the case about the so-and-so. Just say it. Everyone would say it full out. It's so just like not realistic. But that's me calling out to all writers. This isn't like special to this show. Everyone does this, and I just want to stop. But this showing you now, it's not amazing. Like the Wheeler killing, we already knew this. We knew this was happening. They've kind of just dragged on about that case where it just doesn't really hit hard anymore. Now, Clark was convinced it was Annie coming back when he was saying she's awake and pulling down the hatch. And he kept it shut and heard the researchers getting killed. So remember, Clark was in a crazy state after he had killed Annie and was just thinking that she had come back like in a spirit form. Now, this also reveals that he was the one running in the research center when that delivery man came. We saw someone run by. And then he says he went to see Otis because he wanted to know how to survive this Annie spirit he believed in. And he's like, Annie was hiding in those caves there before she was born. And he's like, time is a flat circle. We are stuck in it. This didn't really land for me either, though, in that kind of connection to season 1. It felt forced in here. But when they're talking about these supernatural forces at play, he's talking about thinking of it as Annie, but we'll see the woman from the crab factory, a lot of these native women believe in something else that is above Annie. Like they referenced Annie as the daughter of this bigger spirit that is their view that she's awake. Now, Danvers in all this goes to take a nap, I guess, and Navarro's mother's cross necklace is in her hair, and she's like, what the heck? But meanwhile, Peter is with the bodies, bringing them to Rose. And what frustrates me is the way they were setting this whole episode up, going to Peter and showing him doing this, and the vibes here of Peter himself, that it was going to reveal something big to Peter and all this, and it went nowhere. It led to nothing. So it felt like, honestly, a missed opportunity, which they were kind of setting up themselves, that they had it all there. They had it that he could be helping covering up his father and what he did, and that there was these moments they alluded to, and he's talking to even Rose here, where he said he was fine seeing the air taken out of his own father's lungs. Like, clearly some crazy traits about Peter that are just there but go nowhere. So that was frustrating. But then you go to Danvers, she wakes up from her nap and the power's out. And Clark she finds dead in the ice where Navarro's there. She let him go out there and basically kill himself. But we'll learn at the end of the episode she at least got that tape of Clark admitting that the mines were in on all this and what was going on with the pollution. Now, when Navarro is trying to get a generator cranking, you see a spirit appears behind her, which looked really cool, and that horror effect the show has leaned into. I believe that was definitely Annie. But again, this can all be justified by hallucinations. I mean, they're freezing at this point. They're probably hungry, so that's why you also see this wheel will just supernaturally roll in front of Danvers. Where did that come from? Who moved that wheel? But a lot of this stuff can still be scientific here. But it worked. It was effective to me. I like the spooky feel of all this episode. And what's also crazy is at one point Navarro sees a vision of Clark looking at her scared, saying she's awake. So have fun with that one. I think that lets you play in your mind what could be really going on here, that maybe Navarro is dead and that Danvers is dead. That's why we're always hearing twist and shout and things happening to be related to them in this case. So maybe that leads to that theory I was talking about, that maybe they are actually dead, and you see that Clark had put "We Are All Dead" on the board, so maybe he was seeing Navarro and Navarro was awake to what he was doing. So who really knows? I think that lets you kind of play with that theory there. Now, my favorite scene of the episode is actually Danvers and Navarro at the fire pit. And I think it's because of just the craft of acting, right? And seeing Jodie Foster getting to have her big scene and absolutely just hitting it out of the park. But Navarro's talking about how there's more out there, and she's like, Julia was right. And this is where, again, Danvers is like, she quit, your sister. I know it's your sister, but she doesn't want Navarro to do that. She does not want Navarro to kill herself and talk like that in general. And Navarro's like, Holden, he's out there, Liz. And this really hits a soft spot for Danvers. And she's like, you leave my kid out of it or I'll rip you apart. And she says, I am not merciful. I got no mercy left, which is totally far from the truth. It's the growth in her character where she does have mercy left. She does it literally for this whole group of women who killed the researcher at the end of the episode. So it's just not true when she's saying that. So that really worked for me, that I was saying they're going to have to come to that full circle with her, and that growth and that mercy was brought out in her and her daughter Lee as well. So that was her coming to Lee's side by the end of this episode. Now, Navarro is walking on the ice now, just like Julia, thinking of her trauma in the military. Now, I think it was her mom calling to her, reaching out and giving her a real native name. Now, at the end of the day, watching this, I'm okay with it. They really didn't go too much into the military trauma she had, Navarro, and what happened with losing her partner that was a soldier here. I think that was just showing you a part of her past that gave her trauma that she was getting visions of out here on the ice. Where it did frustrate me is with Danvers, because Danvers goes after her, sees Holt in the ice, hears him, falls in, and Danvers at her last legs here is thinking of that big day. And the problem with that is that we have been teased so much in the show about what exactly happened that day. We know it was a drunk driving incident. We know Holden and her husband died in this. But why was it teased all season long like there was more to it, when at the end of the day there wasn't? It was literally just her walking to the scene, finding them dead at a drunk driving incident. So it's the same info we knew about it from episode 1 all the way in the finale. And they teased and teased and teased like there was something more to this. And there wasn't. So that was a really flat reveal, and it was where my problems start in this episode big time. Now, meanwhile, again, we're going to what's happening with Peter here. When he actually drops the bodies in, I cannot believe what Rose says to him. It's literally the least comforting words you could ever give somebody in that situation who just dropped their own father into the ice. Rose says, "You think this is the worst part? Well, what comes after forever is even worse." I mean, if I was Peter there, I would have thrown Rose into the ice right there. I just didn't understand why he would say that to someone in that moment. Oh my God. I was just like, wow, okay, Rose. Now, they use a blacklight on the hatch, and the fingerprints match the crab factory worker Blair here. And then they go to see them, and then we meet, again, the worker Beatrice. And she tells Navarro what her name means, which is Return of the Sun After Long Darkness. Literally what we're seeing Navarro's effect on this show here, and with it being night all the time, and now she's bringing the light into the town, the darkness they've been in, symbolically and actually visually. Now, Beatrice explains they thought for 6 years it was just the mine and the town who killed Annie Kay, but figured out what really happened when she was mopping, because the water leaked into that secret lab. Now, when she found the moon-shaped tool, my problem here is how would that explain that all the research were involved to her? Like, why would she go from that and say, you know what, they all killed Annie Kay? There wasn't any evidence for her to go off of. And then a ton of women went to the lab, and there was no traces except the hatch. Come on. Like, this is where my eyes rolled really, like, far back. Like, this reveal to me was real letdown, because I felt like the show decided at the end of all this, we're going to go all in on message, but not in on payoff, and feeling like a really sick twist that makes you go, oh, like, it was just like, oh, okay, that's the twist. Like, we didn't know these women. We barely knew them. So the feeling of it connecting to the actual story really felt like letdown, where I felt like if it was someone like a Peter and it connecting to that, it does connect more to the story. We've been with Peter. We saw Beatrice and we saw the other crab factory worker Blair for a minute, you know, so it doesn't really hit. And if it's going in on message, I get the message of it, but it really decided at the end of the day to put all its eggs into that basket to be the big landing strike here, which I don't think landed at all. It made me feel like this episode even was like this really good sundae, but the cherry on top was rotten, and that really makes me frustrated here. I just think it was a little corny at the end of the day. So they did send all the researchers out in the nude to be taken by her, and they were going to let her decide who she was going to take, talking about this she's awake, this spirit they're believing in, and that they marked Lund with the spiral for her, and they left the clothes there. If they were to come back, they believe they could survive. And she says, but it's just a story, so it's letting you think too, maybe they just honestly let them just freeze out there and didn't even believe in that themselves. It's letting you believe if it's supernatural or not. It's up to interpretation. But again, they went off of one tool that they were all involved. Now, we know they were all involved, these researchers killing Annie, but how would they have known that? I thought that was really insane. Danvers and Navarro knew it was all of them because Clark had to tell them that. And that's the thing, I thought with Danvers and Navarro letting them off, it's full circle for Danvers, because yes, she's coming back. She's seeing how these women wouldn't have been able to go to the police with this, and it's growth in her character, because Danvers at the beginning of the show totally would have arrested all of them. But it feels even rushed in that scene, in that moment. It's a big decision, and it's just like, you guys are off, you know? So, I don't know. I just think it was just lame. It felt lame and corny to me. Now, the smart thing was Navarro, anonymously, with Danvers, letting this leak out, this video she had gotten about Clark and how the mine was involved, and you obviously want to leak in Nosley because there's powers that be here that they're shaking up, and it being connected to the Tuttle in that way, and that they were involved with Tuttle. It's such a distant connection to season 1. No, it doesn't pay off enough to how much teasing they did with season 1. It just really doesn't. And when she's doing the post interviews, and these guys, for some reason, which I don't understand, is looking for Navarro. But it's like, okay, this cop goes missing, but they made it seem like she was this really important person to find. So when she's saying lines, Danvers, like, let's put it this way, I don't think you'll ever find Evangeline Navarro out there on the ice. I see that Navarro's grown too, and that she's not doing that she's happy and she's coming to peace with some trauma in her life. But why is it such a big deal that Navarro left town? Why are these cops so in on finding her? Like, they made it like this big mystery that she might have like been this missing woman from the town. But I just feel like we didn't get enough time as the audience to feel like why that was such a big deal at the end of the day, because they landed on that too, where it was like, well, you'll never find her, and then it's like, whoa, she's on the porch with her. So that didn't work for me either. It really is a shame, because I really did think the beginning of this finale, I'd say up into the scene where they go out on the ice together, Danvers and Navarro, it just started having a lot of issues, and I did not like anything that happened with Peter here either. That did not work for me. So it's so hard. I want to give points up for what I liked. And again, Jodie Foster's acting in that scene with the fire pit was spectacular. I loved it. And I like a lot of the reveals going up to what exactly killed the researchers. I like the reveal of how Annie died. That worked. That made sense. It clicked. But the reveal of how the researchers died, I think that's just like, it was like, come on. I think that's what I'm feeling here. And I think a lot of people will be feeling that. So I'm going to give this finale a 7.2, but the points up are for the first half and things that did work, and things with Danvers' character that made sense and worked and came full circle, and same with Navarro. But what didn't land was the reveal of what happened with the drunk driving incident with Holden, because there is no reveal, but it was set up like there was going to be a reveal if you're going to keep showing it and teasing like there's something more and then show nothing. So lame on that, and I think having all these women come into the lab and not leave any traces except the hatch, like, oh boy, like, come on. So yeah, I don't know, but I will say, if people are gonna ask, like, what's your rankings of True Detective seasons, I think still won the best, and I'm gonna put 3 over 4, and it was almost 4 over 3. It's close, but 3 didn't have a great ending. To me, 4 didn't have a great ending either, but overall I think 3 was a little better of a show. And I'm going to put 2, like, we don't talk about season 2. But let me know what you thought down below. I want to hear all your thoughts on this. I really appreciate all the comments you guys give. And if you've joined for this show, great. If you've been with me forever, great too. I appreciate all you guys. So please subscribe so you can stick with me. And it's on Spotify, the show now. And I also do an X-Men channel you can check out on YouTube, X-Men Trove. We're going to be jumping to X-Men 97 very soon. Thank you guys so much. And I'll see you next time.